Hi, everybody. Hello. I think it's working this time. Apologies. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty with our first live stream, so sorry about that. Welcome to Dorset Council's live sofa session Facebook live, and I'm Councillor Laura Beddoe. I'm the Cabinet Member for Culture and Communities. I'm joined this evening by Aidan Dunn, who's our Finance Director, waving there, Councillor Spencer Flower, who's the Leader of the Council, and Councillor Gary Suttle, who's Deputy Leader of the Council and also the money chap. So before we go into our questions, I've got some that have already been sent in, and we've obviously got a live comment stream. So if you've got comments that you'd like to leave or questions that you'd like to ask us, just pop them into the comments and then I'll read them out. But before we go into that, I'm just going to ask Aidan to give us a really quick introduction to how and why and what this year's budget is all about. So Aidan, off you go.
Laura, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. I'm Aidan Dunn. So I'm the Dorset Council's Finance Director. So very clear that I'm an officer of the council. I haven't been elected. I don't have to go through a vote and thing like that. So I'm an officer of the council, and my role is to advise the councillors, all 82 councillors across Dorset, in particular advising them on the council's finances. So tonight here on Facebook Live, we wanted to talk about the council's budget, and the reason is we're in budget season. Next Tuesday, the 13th of February, is a crucial day in the council's calendar because it's the day that the budget goes to full council. And we're really conscious that what we're talking about is local residents' money, the taxpayers' money. So we wanted to be as clear as possible about where that money comes from and where it goes in the budget proposals. Now, I'm very conscious that some viewers may be avid council followers. They may have watched the 10 hours of YouTube scrutiny videos. They may have watched or read the 187-page budget report. But for the vast majority, I'm thinking probably not. So I'm just going to give a quick 2-minute overview of the budget proposals. So as a council, we provide a whole range of services. I think there's about 450 different services at last count, ranging from waste collection through to social care, both adults and children's social care. We look after the highways, we provide library services, we provide school transport. So a really large range of services, and they all cost money to operate and to run smoothly. And like residents will be feeling across Dorset, the cost of those services has been going up during the course of the year. So that's the first thing we have to take into account when we set the budget. What we have to look at is rising costs, and those costs in particular have been affected by inflation over the last year. We also have to think about the increase in demand, the number of people that require support from us, in particular in areas of social care. But over the last year, home to school transport has been under real pressure as well, so particularly with children with special educational needs. So our costs are going up there. We look at government funding, and the figures from government have been changing right up until last week when we got an announcement of a little bit more money as well. So we bring all that together in our budget process. We also look at the level of income that we'll receive through charging, and of course look at the efficiencies that we can make. So we want to provide the same and better levels of service year on year, but we want to do it at less cost each year. So that's part of our mantra, is trying to be more efficient each year. So we bring all those numbers together, and we've calculated for next year that our budget needs to be £377 million. And so we then have to look about where does that funding come from. So what we're expecting next year is income from business rates, so from the rates that local businesses pay. Some of it goes to government, some of it comes to us as a council. So we're looking to raise £64 million from business rates. We're going to get grants from government, about 4 million of specific grants, and then under £1 million of an unring-fenced grant, so a general grant, the revenue support grant, that's £1 million or so. And the rest of the funding has to come from council tax, from local residents. So next year, for next financial year, so from the 1st of April, we'll be looking to raise about £308 million, £308 million through council tax to fund those services that I've described. So that does mean that council tax will have to go up, that's the budget proposal. That's what councillors will be talking about in particular at next week's council meeting. So the budget proposals mean putting council tax up and the equivalent of about £1.82 per week for residents in a Band D property. So that's your sort of average, £1.82 a week. And with that money, what are we going to do with it? The bulk of it will go into supporting social care. So £148 million is planned to be spent on through adult social care. So looking at supporting vulnerable residents who are older people, residents with learning disabilities, just generally supporting vulnerable people. We're looking to spend £68 million on children's social care for supporting vulnerable children. And then those services that the vast majority of Dorset Council's residents experience: street cleaning, waste collection, waste disposal. We're looking to spend about £33 million on that. And then that topic, there's a really hot topic at the moment, travel, and in particular home to school transport. We'll be looking to spend around about £40 million next year. So that was just a quick canter through of where the money's coming from, the headlines of where it's going to be spent, all the details in the paper, but this is why we're making it accessible, hopefully more accessible this evening. So Laura, if I may, perhaps if we could hand over to sort of Spencer now, just a few sort of reflections if I hand over to the Leader of the Council.
That'd be great. Thanks, Aidan. Spencer, do you want to come on in?
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura, and thanks, Aidan, for setting the budget out so well, in my view. It's a difficult time, isn't it? And one of the challenges we always have is setting council tax and having to increase council tax. But as we all know on this call, one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is that we maintain the services that we deliver, the 450 plus services we deliver the people of Dorset. We have got funding from central government is inadequate. It's a problem across the sector, and we've done our bit to campaign to get more funding for Dorset. But in the meantime, we have quite a high dependency on council tax, which is something that I would like to see get lower. And I think we are working towards getting it lower, but it takes time. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for me as an elected member is seeing us sustain our services. And we've achieved that, of course we have, by not just putting up council tax and getting a bit more money from government, but being more efficient. You touched on it earlier. You know, we've saved around £100 million so far in the time of this new council, with more to come. And it's all been rolled back into services, which is why we've been able to sustain our services when many councils around us and around the country are having to make quite severe cuts in their services and put the council tax up. So it's a poor cocktail of increased cost and less provision. We're not in that situation in Dorset, and I'm really pleased that we've all worked across the chamber with officers, with members, and with the public to make sure we've sustained it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Aidan and Spencer, for setting the scene. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go straight into questions because, no offense to you guys, but that's the main bit. That's where we get the value, and that's where people can ask what they want to ask. Just before we go into some of the questions on the budget, there's a couple of comments which I'd just like to run through. Alex Bailey, I think that your comment is a little bit long for the Facebook Live comments section, so it's not come out in full, but I know that you've asked it for full council next week, so we will see you there. I'm just going to go down. Tina, an update on NHS dentists. That's not something that's within the council's gift, and it's not something that we spend on, but I know that that's probably something that our colleagues over at NHS Dorset, if I can signpost you over to them, because that doesn't appear in our budget as a budget cost, and we can't sort of influence that. Right, we've had some questions in already. Craig, I've popped it on the bottom. How does the announcement of extra funding to councils from the government affect the budget? And how will you continue to deliver a balanced budget and project services? So I don't know. Gary, do you want to have a run at the first part of that question?
Oh, I'll have a go.
Thank you.
So we've recently had some good news, and probably from, as Aidan explained, we get very little money from central government, under £1 million in reality, 0.7 and about 700,000. And this is welcome news because we're going to get just under £4 million extra. Now, what we've already done is we've already funded all of the requirements of adult social care, children's social care, the police directorate, the bins, etc., that Aidan was referring to. But on top of that, we actually needed to save another £12 million. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this 4 million effectively to bring it down to 8. That doesn't mean we're missing the challenge. We're continuing on, because what we do, or what we've been trying desperately to do, is two things. One, we've been trying to get out of the top league of high council tax, and when we came here, we were a third, I believe. And if you take just the council tax element of Dorset, we're now 13th, so we're improving. It's still a long way to go. I want to be far down that list if we can. But also, we're trying to maintain services as they were, so that no one sees any reduction. And that's tough in times of 10% inflation. We can't put council tax up 10%, and we wouldn't want to, but we have to absorb that. So last year's been interesting, but that's 4 million. That's what we're going to use it for. So hopefully
okay.
that covers
That, I think that's good. Thank you. That's great. I'm just going to go into the next one. Now this one, Joyce from Verwood, buses. That's not strictly a budgety type question, but Spencer, you are ward member for Verwood. Do you want to pick that one up? Will you? Joyce, if you message in separately.
Yeah, what we do it very quickly on this one. As you say, it isn't directly related to budgets, but I do understand the issues that Joyce has in Verwood. I am one of the 3 local members. I'm quite happy to be out of this meeting, and very happy to have a conversation with her and try and signpost her to some of the opportunities that do exist in the town, where she can get some transport provision.
Perfect. Joyce, drop the council a message and they'll put you in touch with Spencer. I'm rattling through the pre-sent in ones. Now this one's one for me. Can you explain why you've decided to withdraw funding and cause the closure of QE Leisure Centre? Yes, I can explain that. Dorset Council doesn't own QE Leisure Centre. It belongs to the Academy Trust, the school. It was costing approximately a third of our overall complete leisure budget spend, and we can't justify that in one place when we cover the whole of Dorset. It doesn't mean the closure of the centre. The school are keeping it open. It's just going to work in a slightly different way. You have to be part of a community group to hire the facilities, but the school are taking that on because it's their facility. So hopefully that's helpful. The last pre-submitted one is Catherine. The proportion of the budget spent on adult social care is by far the largest. Could you please give a rough breakdown of how this is apportioned, and how does that compare with? I assume it says other authorities. We mustn't forget, of course, Aidan, that adult social care includes housing, which is a huge part of our budget importance. So I don't know who would like to pick that one up on the adult social care.
I can just give a quick overview, although I'll be sort of stealing Aidan's information.
That's okay.
148 million,
isn't it?
148 million on adults out of 377 million, 68 million on children. I can't comment on others around us, but I do know that the majority of our neighbours are under significant and severe pressure to maintain this element of their budget. I don't know if you know any more exact figures, but you can see that in excess of 70% of the budget is being absorbed by adults and children. And I often wonder why a local authority is actually doing this, why this isn't part of NHS, or why it's not part of something else. So it's an enormous responsibility, The problem with it, and the big problem, is that it's completely and utterly unpredictable. Tomorrow, adults might get 30 people who need help, or they might get nobody. When we're trying to budget for this, it's an absolute nightmare. If you could not predict at all what will happen, very, very difficult. But Aidan may have some numbers from around us. Thank you.
I'm desperately flicking through my notes to find some numbers, in particular about breaking down the adult social care figures. I think, Laura, can I just make a broader comment around about councils around us and nationally, because it's highly unusual that local government finance should appear in the newspapers once a year, let alone it feels on a daily basis. There's a whole number of councils have been declaring these, what we're calling Section 114 notices, effectively declaring themselves bankrupt. So first of all, I wanted to sort of reassure sort of people watching that Dorset Council is not in that position. We've got a realistic budget. We've set a realistic budget and a healthy level of reserves, so we're not in that high risk category. But I am aware of many councils are in the southwest around the surrounding us who are grappling with really significant overspends this financial year and are looking to cut services next financial year in order to live within their means, striking that balance between, well, they've got a statutory duty to live within their means, and we're really fortunate in Dorset Council that we are not in that position, and that does mean that we're able to increase budgets next year. So overall, looking at an 8% uplift on the budgets, putting more money into adult social care, more money into children's services. So I'll come back in a few minutes, if I may, with just a bit more detail
that's fine.
To unpack the adult budget. But in the meantime, I think that sense that we're in a more fortunate position than many in terms of financial stability.
Thanks, Aidan. That's helpful. I'm just going to go back to the comments. So there's a couple that come into my portfolio. Are there any plans to increase dog enforcement program given the recent decision to allow dogs off lead on our beaches? Thank you, Zoe. Yes. So we have allowed dogs off lead in winter in some beaches. I can report at the moment, hot off the press, that my team is recruiting for dog enforcement officers. So I hope that's helpful. And then Sharon, is that Sharon? Is that Sharon from the bins who I did a round with? I think it is. I think it's hi Sharon, if it is. Very good point. Why can't residents that are clearly running a business from their home not be charged for commercial waste? They should be. And actually, we've got a graduate called Kitty who is doing a piece of work on this right now, Sharon. And how, things like Airbnbs and things like that, we don't want those costs unfairly falling on the average resident who's not running a business. So that piece of work's happening at the moment. Perfect. We'll go on to this one. This is Lisa. Question on social care and help for mental health. Bibby Stockholm gets us taxpayer paying for all their travel. Is that the case, Aidan? I don't think that's the case. I think that's funded by government.
Yeah, that's correct. So just to I'll put a few numbers around that. The funding that we receive funding from the Home Office for the barge, and that's basically two chunks. So we receive £3,500 per barge occupant, as it were, and then also a lump sum of £377,000 to support voluntary sector activity around and about the barge. So our experience to date is that we have not had to use local taxpayers' council tax funding to support the barge, so financially that's the position. Okay,
great. And we were really clear about that right from the start, that we didn't want that to happen. We weren't going to allow that to happen. Thank you, Hilary. I hope that answers your question as well. I've popped that up there just now. Social housing and the lack thereof. It's not technically a budget question, but it kind of is, because we know that there is a shortage of housing. Gary, do you have any comments at all about money, because housing is part of the adults budget, isn't it? And we work with registered landlords, but we know that we need more social housing. in Dorset particularly.
Mm. There is absolutely no doubt. My emails are full of people who just cannot find anywhere to live. It's a crisis, really, which we're doing our best. We're working with social landlords in Swanage. We're working with local community group, Community Land Trust, to hopefully build a few, and we're trying to look for other areas throughout Dorset that we could promote Community Land Trust. But at the end of the day, we need to build. And one of the problems is that I believe, and Spencer knows the exact figure, I believe there's over 11,000 planning permissions yet to be built. And if they were built, this would help with the situation. I believe that's the correct number, isn't it, Spencer?
Yes, it is, Gary. We've been constrained by the issues around the Poole Bay, the
nitrate
issue, waiting for government guidance. We've got that now, and we've had some funding from government to help us mitigate some of the impact on the Poole Basin area, which will start to free up some of the planning applications. But you're quite right, there's a huge backlog, and within that there will be a percentage of affordable housing to rent in there, and it's a really big problem for us because we've got a growing waiting list, and our registered providers did deliver 664 houses in the last measured year, which was the highest I can recall, but that's fine, but it's still about half what we need. So it's a big issue, and we're very well aware of it, and we're working with our registered land providers to try and enhance the number of affordable housing to rent as we go forward.
It's also worth noting, isn't it, that we've got the second home council tax premium, and we can use a percentage of that to try to increase the number of social rented houses. And and I think not to underestimate the work that the Preventing Homelessness team does to actually stop people getting to that crisis point where they're in need of the housing in the first place, to sort of reduce the pressure. So that's a great question, Tina. Thank you. Aidan.
Laura, can I just jump in? You mentioned the second homes council tax premium. So that is sort of a hot topic because there's a paper about that going to full council next week as well, prior to the budget item. So just to sort of raise awareness of it, really. So the proposal, so it hasn't been approved yet, but government recently changed the rules around council tax that would enable local authorities, if they so wish to charge double council tax on second homes, and to more quickly charge double council tax on empty properties. Now, there's lots of rules and regulations around that, which are documented in the paper, but that is a proposal that's going to be discussed by council next week. Clearly, there are pros and cons in terms of the impact on local economy versus an opportunity for second home owners, a perception that if they're able to afford a second home, then can they afford second home council tax? So that's an issue that's going to be debated next week. If passed by full council, then the charge would come in from April 2025, so over a year's time.
Okay. Thanks, Aidan. That's helpful. Craig John Monks, who sets the budget? Well, we all do, I suppose. So who wants to, Aidan, is this one for you, or Gary? Do you want to have a go about the process, the budget setting process, I guess?
Okay, well, what we try and do, and we're very keen to do, is have a very inclusive process to set the budget so that all councillors are involved, because at the end of the day, they've all got to vote on it. Not dictated by one group or any such thing. It's a combination of thoughts, and it's a combination of input from everybody. So we've done various task and finish groups. We've done various meetings of information. We've had 2 very long scrutiny meetings, which have been very productive about it. And eventually, based on everybody's opinion, we have set a budget. And obviously, we have our own slant on how it would be best to construct that budget, and it's been to cabinet. There weren't too many questions there. I expect a few more on Tuesday night. But the bottom line is that we're as I've said, we're trying to reduce the burden on the local taxpayer. We're trying to maintain services, and above all, we want to look to the future, because the
Yeah.
future of the council's finances are, if not uncertain, but they're difficult, because we are an underfunded council, and in the budget papers you will see an interesting chart where we get 0.7 million, but if you lived in
Mhm.
Leicester, Aidan, I believe the figure is 36 million is received
Yeah.
by the residents of. And so when people say to us, why is my council tax so high and why is it cheaper elsewhere, that is one of the reasons. And Spencer spends a lot of time lobbying government about the way in which they treat Dorset, the way in which we're funded, because they don't really take into account very aging population, long rural roads, poor infrastructure in places, etc. We don't get any. They don't look at us and think these people need more. For some reason, they look at us and think we need less. And
Yeah.
it's a struggle. And I keep saying, and I have in many meetings, and I'm sure Aidan will bear me out, and Spencer, we're starting every year about minus 20 plus million. And that's why we are desperate to find ways to improve the way we work and to make savings, because we don't want to touch service. Going back, you said about neighbours, I believe that Hampshire have to save 130 million. One of their proposals is to shut
Something
half
like that.
of
Yeah.
their recycling centres. Half. Imagine that. So we're not faced with anything like that. We're it's okay at the moment, but we are very minded to the future, which is something that we must look forward very carefully at. Okay, that's me.
Thanks, Gary. That's great. I'm rattling through these because we've got loads of comments, which is brilliant. Keep it going. Improving healthcare provision in Chickerell, which is one of the fastest growing areas in the county. I'll just take the first part of that question, if you don't mind, John. But I think in terms of healthcare provision, it's true to say, isn't it? Perhaps Spencer, that when we get a planning application in, we ask for the infrastructure. So by that I mean schools, doctors, any additional infrastructure that's needed to be provided as upfront as it can be, because what we don't want is people moving in, increasing the population of an area without the facilities to follow. So we can't provide a new doctor or whatever, but we can ask for it from developers. That's right, isn't it?
It is correct. I mean, the other factor, of course, is that because of the shipment situation, you can't have a single doctor surgery. You have to have multiple doctor surgeries, and the number of patients you need per doctor is higher than most people would appreciate. So there's a challenge there, but it is part of the planning process. You're quite right, because it is looking at the facilities around the development. It isn't just adding another few hundred houses here, there and everywhere. We have to take all these factors into account, and certainly where I live, where I've seen, and quite recently, an additional doctor being added to the surgery to cater for the extra housing that's gone in.
So we will be trying to influence that and saying we've got that's great.
So. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Oh, Sharon, it is Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Okay. Now we're going into a couple of questions from Charlie, and there's one here, and then there's one just a little bit further down. I'll try and take them together. So we own and operate 13 sewage treatment works, many of which have been highlighted as failing to produce even basics of levels of compliance. This is quite a niche question, and I don't want to be slopey shouldered about it. But we might not have the right people on the. Oh, Aidan's waving at me. I was just thinking we might need a sewage treatment expert on the call.
Well,
Aidan,
maybe
go
you've
for it.
got one.
Well, that's fine. I'm very happy with that.
I'm not going to comment specifically on the 13 sewage treatment plants, but I'd like to comment on our estate in general and the property and assets that we own. But doesn't it just show the sheer variety of things that Dorset Council does?
Really
ranging from adult social care, supporting a barge, through to treatment works. So one of the things that we've done as a council over the course of this last year is look comprehensively about all the assets that we do own as a council, ranging from our depots through to our buildings. And we've done a compliance review looking in particular at health and safety, fire compliance and all that sort of thing. And what that's enabling us to build is a proper and full maintenance program that really enables us to make sure that everything's compliant. And this is a piece of legacy work that when we brought the councils together 5 years ago, we inherited so many different properties and assets.
Yeah.
It's taken us a while, but I'm sure the sewage treatment works will be on the list. If they're not, they will be by tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Thank you. Hope that's helpful. Following on, I'm sort of switching about a bit here, but following on from that, nitrates in Poole Basin restricting housing developments, polluting sewage works, discharge high nitrate levels into Poole catchment. Now, this is a really interesting one. And again, we just maybe touch on this briefly because it's sort of not directly budget related. But I know that, you know, the nitrate levels that go into Poole Harbour are in some cases sort of 20, 30, 40 years old. So this isn't a recent problem that we're dealing with. But Charlie, you're quite right. It is an important one. And I don't know if any of my colleagues have got anything to say specifically on that. It's more of a planning question, but I just wanted to sort of give it some airtime because it was popped up in the comments. But I think, you know, if you write in, drop us an email, drop us a DM, then we can get you a more detailed response on that. Tina, your comment about temporary accommodation, if you could also send us a direct message, the comms team will pick it up. And then they can take it back to housing to have a quick look at that, if that would be helpful. We'd be keen to try and do that. Helen, are people who are homeless from the UK? Most in Dorset, we have some people who may need to have applied to the housing register because they have come out of the Homes for Ukraine scheme, for example. You know, there will be some that are not from the UK, but I couldn't give you the percentage. All I would say is, you know, that's not really particularly relevant to the budget. But we know that housing is a problem. Sorry, I'm just flicking this through. And this is a question, mitigating transport and problems. Should the Portland incinerator receive planning permission? Aidan or Spencer, I know that this is a live appeal, isn't it? So it's not necessarily something that we would know. It's been refused and they're appealing.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can really comment. It's a live issue. It's going through an appeal process. It's had the public inquiry. I don't think it would be right for us this evening to comment on that until we know the outcome of it.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Thank you, though, for your question. Helen, why don't we cover flats with solar panels? I think that's a great idea. I'd love to. I'd cover car parks with solar panels. Who wants to have a go at Helen's question?
Yeah, Laura,
Aidan, go for it.
If I could comment, so the sort of social housing, Dorset Council doesn't necessarily own sort of that many properties at all. It's registered housing providers. But what we have done over the last 2 years, we appealed to government, or bid to government, received £19 million worth of capital funding to reduce Dorset Council's carbon footprint. And what we've done is put solar panels on Dorset Council's assets as much as possible, ranging from where I am tonight at the council headquarters in Dorchester, sort of covered with solar panels, through to many of our other buildings as possible. It's had a really helpful effect on reducing our carbon emissions and reducing our costs of fuel, which has been really important during the last year or two, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has.
Laura, while I'm got it's Aidan again. Can I?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
Gary's waving on that point, and then I come back to you.
No.
Yeah.
I was just going to say about the solar panels. You know, from my point of view, not that I'm anything to do with planning, but if I was, I'd make every single new home have solar panels, and some other form of generation, so that we could reduce the costs. It seems madness to build new homes that haven't got this technology now. But that is the what is it called? The National Planning Policy Framework dictates.
That's right.
But if I was in charge of planning, that's what I'd do. I'd make every new person who built anything at all cover it in solar panels, turbines, insulation, and anything else. And I would pay for this by reducing their community infrastructure levy, because It is infrastructure. And overall, if you did this for decades, it would reduce everything. But, you know, I'm not on planning, but maybe I should be.
It's got to be a collaborative effort, hasn't it? Okay, moving on. We are looking at. Oh, sorry, Aidan, you wanted to come in on something else. I'm getting all overexcited with the comments chat.
Laura, if I could just circle back round on a couple of points. So we've got colleagues behind the scenes giving me some numbers, which is really helpful. So one of the comments we've got in the chat is around Charlie Taylor is saying about, hang on, why haven't you been on top of your property maintenance over the last 5 years already? And this, I wasn't clear enough in my point. What we're on top of property maintenance. It's having that clear plan for the next sort of 5 to 10 years, so we're moving from reactive maintenance into proactive maintenance. So I should have made that clear. So I'm sorry, Charlie, and thanks for picking me up on that. In terms of the specific point about the sewage treatment works, for example, so just checking through the numbers, we've got £4.1 million set aside in next year's capital programme for sewage treatment works. So that's looking to be in hand already, which is really helpful. And then if I could circle back to the adult social care point, from sewage to adult social care, looking at where we spend our adult social care money, the vast majority of our funding, and so for this current financial year, it's about 120 million. We spend buying care. So we don't necessarily provide care ourselves. We buy care through private agencies, be that home care, so people travelling around, carers travelling around providing care, or in residential care accommodation. So the vast majority of our money we have contracts for, essentially about 120 million. In terms of housing and community safety, which is in the overall adult social care and housing budget, spending about 7 million on housing and community safety, which is a really important, as we touched on before as well. So hopefully that just clarifies a couple of points.
That's really helpful. And thank you to the backstage team looking up all these figures.
And also, Laura, one of the points that we were going to touch on was about the relationship with MPs. There was a question earlier, so I'm not sure if you want to bring Spencer in on that one.
Yeah, Spencer, do you want to just comment on that? Because I'm conscious that I sort of skipped over that bit. So sorry.
I would, please, because one of the things I've fostered since 2019 when we became a council was that strong relationship with our MPs. And as you know, I meet all of the Dorset MPs on a regular basis. And I've got to give credit where credit's due, in the sense that if I write letters to ministers or secretaries of state, they tend to follow them up. They also speak in the Commons on a number of occasions on budget issues for local government. So a huge amount of support coming from our Dorset MPs, and I know that we've benefited from that support, and that particularly, for example, the additional £4 million that was mentioned earlier, we've got that as a result of strong lobbying, not just by me, not just by my colleagues in local government, but also support, and I'm aware of this, support from one of the Dorset MPs who has a role in local government these days, where he was able to really put a strong case to get his additional funding. So it's wrong to say that MPs are not doing their bit. They are. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Right. We've got a question about buses now. Please, can you fund buses that were axed in 2016-17? Many villages cut off and something needs to be done. Buses, public transport, really tricky issue in rural places. I know myself, we have just funded or organised or somehow made happen a bus route coming out of Weymouth that was at risk. I know that. We do have, I'm just thinking this isn't directly budget related, but we can get you an update from Ray Bryan, who's the cabinet member who's doing a lot of work on this. He's particularly obsessed with buses at the moment. So if I could ask the comms team who are online to just make a note of that, and maybe Tubbs Armand, if you could send us a DM, and we can get you a bit more detail on that. Aidan.
Laura, just a quick comment on that, because those sort of looking through the budget papers will see that our most significant area of financial pressure is on home to school transport at the moment. So next year we are increasing that budget by £12 million, a really substantial amount, in particular to support children with special educational needs to get them to their really important, to enable them to receive their really important education. So that's where investment into transport is going. That's not necessarily public buses. Some of it is sort of taxi journeys and that sort of thing. We have a statutory responsibility to provide those services to transport those children to school. So, and it's one of those things, we can't afford to provide everything. So we have to go, first of all, with the statutory responsibilities, and that's where the additional 12 million is going.
Laura,
thanks, Aidan.
Comment on the buses.
Come on in.
I recall back, believe it or not, back in 2016-17, when we looked at bus routes, bearing in mind it was the council subsidising the operator to have the bus on the road, and then there's a factor around its usage. And we did a really detailed analysis of the usage across the routes, and a lot of them simply weren't viable. And so we removed our subsidy. But also some of the routes we've lost are commercial routes which weren't viable by the operator, so they removed it. And there simply isn't the funding these days in our budgets, let alone, and in fact that applies all across country, because some have got no subsidy at all because it's not affordable. So yes, I accept it's a challenge. I really have sympathy for those that are, particularly in rural areas, where they get a degree of isolation as a result of an inadequate bus service. But it's probably something, as you say, we can take out of this meeting and get Ray to deal with it directly with the
I'm
question.
thinking like the community transport side of things might be helpful. Thanks, folks. Okay, so with the council's budget pressures, it seems more is being expected of key local voluntary agencies to provide key services. These need some paid staff and core expenses to train and support the volunteers involved. How does the council see future funding for this sector? It's really important, Richard. That's a great question. This comes under my cabinet role. We do brilliant work with our brilliant voluntary sector colleagues. I can't speak highly enough of them. Just yesterday, we were at a catch up with our Homes for Ukraine guests and colleagues and people that work with us. We work with a number of local voluntary organisations. Help and Kindness is one. They're one of our key partners. We're looking at a voluntary sector assembly. How do I see the future funding for this sector? Essential is how I see it. They're our partners. End of story. So I hope that's helpful and reassuring. Let's have a look. Aidan, he's very polite with his hand. Just come in.
Thanks, Laura. Just a quick comment on our cost of living work, which is really crucial. And Richard's comment in the chat is really helpful about that as a helpful reminder. So at the beginning of this current financial year, Cabinet put forward and agreed a proposal to spend £2 million from reserves to support cost of living, recognising the challenges that our residents were experiencing. And quite a lot of that money has gone into local voluntary sector agencies, Age Concern, for example, and Citizens Advice, who have used that money to employ people who are able to give residents benefits advice, debt advice, and housing advice as well. So Richard's point and your point that what we're looking for is a blend. Dorset is blessed with a number of residents that are really, really willing to volunteer and to provide their time. We can't afford to pay them all, but where it's the right thing to do to provide funding for agencies who are a mixture of volunteers, fundraising locally, and council support, I think that's got to be the future, hasn't it?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you. Right. I wondered when we would get this question. And it's a good question, actually, but it's one we get a lot. And I think it would be worth leaving Aidan to out of the conversation on this one, because it's about senior members' high salaries to put them in line with the general public in these hard times. stop enhancing their pensions and paying bonuses, and put the saved money towards the budget reduction. Spencer, this is probably one for you, but I think the answer is that some of the salaries do seem incredibly high, and we'd all love to be paid that much, but they are in line with what those jobs are paid nationally. And if we didn't pay it, we just wouldn't get the people to do the jobs. I mean, that's essentially it, isn't it?
It is indeed. I mean, we have to pay the market rate. There is a lot of pressure on us. The qualities that we need and we've attracted to our council demonstrates itself in the quality of the output. The quality of what we do as a council, I think, reflects on the quality of the officer team that we rely on to deliver our services. And, huge credit to all of them. But the simple fact is, if we want to recruit the right people for the right jobs, we have to pay the market rate. That is the market rate, in my view. I don't think we can, if we start bucking the trend, we'll lose people. We'll then not be able to deliver our services. Then we'll be coming into criticism, understandably, the criticism because we're not delivering as we said we would. So, we are where we are, and that is the current situation in the market.
Thanks, Spence. But I think it's also worth saying, we've got great apprenticeships available. We've got great opportunities in the council, for people of all ages, whether you're starting out or whether you want to change your career, you could be one of those high earners. It's not, this isn't some exclusive club. It's we're paying the market demand, if you like, but there's opportunities for Dorset people.
Can I come back on that? Because as you know, I'm a great advocate of apprenticeships. It's something that I believe quite strongly about. And I'm right in saying we've got over, I don't know the exact number, but it's certainly over 250 people on apprenticeships in Dorset Council. Yeah. And I think we set a really good example in Dorset about how you bring on your own talent. Homegrown talent is the way forward. It isn't just bringing people in from elsewhere. We need to develop our own talent, and I think we've 100%. Done a really good job on that.
100%. I think it's worth noting. Yeah.
Can I put in a quick plug for an event? So
you can plug
mercilessly. So first of all, it's National Apprentice Week, so we really are celebrating our apprentices.
Oh wow, we're on brand.
Excellent. But on the 11th of March. This year, we've got a Dorset Council Early Careers Fair. So this is aimed at children who are sort of leaving school soon, an opportunity for them to come and meet colleagues that work in services ranging from highways through to social care through to the IT team. We've got such a variety of employment and there's some real opportunity. So if children sort of leaving school soon, wondering where could they go, come along and on the 11th of March to the Early Careers Fair, and a real opportunity to find out about working for Dorset Council, and who knows, in a few years' time it's going to be at the Dorford Centre, so in the centre of Dorchester. This is our first one, and depending on how it goes, when we hope to be able to sort of do a roadshow around the county.
Awesome. You heard it here first. Actually, you probably didn't because we've already advertised it. But well done, Aidan. And please come along. It should be good. Okay. Comments coming in quite fast. Future plans to improve our carbon footprint here in Dorset. Not. I think probably that's one for Ray, who's leading the climate work. Does anyone have any comments sort of that link it to the budget? I know that we're, it's really important. Spencer?
Yeah, I will, because it's sitting in our budget is staff around delivering our green agenda. We've got our climate change and ecological strategy. We've got a plan in place. Aidan touched on it earlier. We got money from government. We've invested that money very well. So that's benefiting us from a council's perspective in terms of carbon footprint. And I know that we're also looking to increase the capacity in that area. I believe that is included in the budget. So we continue to drive forward a really strong, progressive strategy around delivering on that green agenda.
Awesome. Thank you. That's brilliant. A reserves question. Look, Aidan's all like, reserves question. How much does Dorset Council have in their reserves? Government said councils not dipping into reserves they have and are keeping them as savings. Wouldn't this help people with high council tax bills? As you say, we have one of the highest in the country. Aidan, do you want to start? Make a start. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just gonna let's get
if I
through.
make a start and then
Okay.
invite Gary in. So essentially, our reserves, we set aside about 10% of our funding level as reserves. So we've got 37 million pounds set aside in next year's budget as a reserve
Okay.
for when really difficult things happen. And this is where councils that haven't got that level of reserve, those are the ones that are keeling over into Section 114 and are having to sort of appeal for government support. But Gary, did you want to come in and comment?
It's a strange comment by government, isn't it? Because we have to have a reserve. It's a policy, and also our auditors make sure that we have sufficient reserves. Our reserve is 10% of the budget, as Aidan said, 37 million, and we've maintained that throughout the last 5 years because it's very important. But if you look, as I've said before, to the medium-term financial plan, you will see that we need that level of reserves to maintain services in future years. And that's it's very easy to look at this year and say, make my council tax less. And if we did that, we would be we would be with Hampshire and our other neighbours reducing services, cutting waste, doing all sorts of things. And none of us here want to do that. And I'm sure the residents don't want us to do that either. What we've always adopted is a prudent financial plan to ensure safety for services, not just this year, but for years and years to come. And if we dip into them now, you only get the opportunity. You can only dip in once, and they're gone. So we're very conscious of that, and we are very. I was going to say word protective, but that's not really true. What we are is we're trying to be financially astute, because no one throws away all their savings, unless they have to.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And use it to invest, not to dip, as you say. I'm just going to go to Zoe. Single person, so extra help with council tax apart from a single person discount. Now, Gary, you're waving at me.
Well, yeah, I really feel that feel for this lady. I really don't understand why this is. As you probably know, in the previous council meeting, we brought in a new scheme of 100% relief if you fall into certain criteria. And I suggest she either emails the finance team or she emails me.
Okay.
I'd like to look at this because I think we can help her based on what she said here. It might not be so, and that's the point of a lot of these sessions. I hate to see this. I just can't. These are the people in this situation are the ones who need help most, and that's what I thought we were trying to do. So I'm really disappointed to see. Yeah.
No, so Zoe, email in, please, or direct message, because we've gone from 90% council tax relief to 100%, if it apply, if the criteria applies. So do drop us an email. Okay. Thank you. We've got 3 minutes, and there's a question just quickly. What have we done with the alleged 2 million received from the Bibby Stockholm residents? There is a breakdown of that. Aidan, do you want to just really quickly we won't be able to go into huge amounts of detail, obviously, but do you want to maybe signpost Kate or try and address that?
Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned earlier, we get a small amount of, some funding for the based on the number of occupiers on the barge, and a lump sum to go to the social to community support.
That's right.
So clearly we've transferred the money to community support, which links to that earlier question about funding the voluntary sector. And the other funding, I haven't got a breakdown to hand, but we as a council are incurring some costs in terms of staffing time and that kind of things. There is some funding that's gone direct to the police, I believe, as well.
That's right, and community safety.
In the community safety, yeah. So I haven't got a breakdown to hand, but I'm sure that's something that we can look to provide.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's just have a look. Okay. Well, there we go. I think We're dangerously close to actually completing an hour. Comments have stopped coming in. Oh, thanks, John. Oh, hi, John. Hi, John. Yonwin. Very good open session. Thank you. Thanks for coming. So I guess, is there anything else that anybody wanted to finish up with, or just quickly, I mean, just really to thank everybody for attending. Thank you for the session. Very useful. Oh, thanks, Steve.
Laura, you're just going back to Zoe said, oh, it doesn't apply to me, I'm working. But I just had a quick interaction with Officer. Please still try and contact us, because it depends on your level of earnings and capital. So it's still possible. Just because you're working, a lot of these scheme, part of the scheme is to help people who are working, but it's just not enough. So I think I want to help Zoe if I can.
Yeah, do drop us an email. Spencer, come on in.
Yeah, perhaps the final word. I'd just like to thank everybody for the questions. I think there've been a really good range of questions. They've tested us. Hopefully we've given some acceptable answers. There's a few bits of signposting going on as well. Overall, I think it's demonstrated the benefit and the outcomes of having this sort of session. So I hope those that have been involved have found it useful this evening.
Yeah, hope so. And actually we do really like being asked questions. We do really like being tested. It's what we're here for. And any opportunity to kind of talk about the great stuff we do and how we do it is welcome. Chris, can you drop us a message, because I think that's something that we'll need to take offline, but do drop us a message, because the comms team will pick it up.
Laura,
okay.
just there's a number of people have asked things about their children, about schooling, and about things. We haven't. It's not really our remit. However, we're here to help. I'm quite disappointed to read some of the stuff, but please contact us. We're here to help. If we can help, and we can, or at least answer your question. And we haven't got time here now, but that's what we're here for, and we would, do our best.
Yeah, fantastic. And well said, Gary. The number to call if you've got any benefit related questions is 01305 211 930. So that's for benefit related stuff. Drop us a message or an email if there's any specific, as Gary said, questions. That would be great. So I guess we'll sign off now and leave you to go about your evenings, and I hope they are good ones. And thank you all for taking the time to join us. We have got full council next Tuesday, so you'll be able to see that online as well if you want to join us for that as well. So thank you, Gary, Spencer, Aidan, for your time this evening. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.